Our story begins in the ancient city of Jerusalem. Just a few days after the crucifixion of Jesus, the sky feels heavy, and the streets, usually bustling with life, are now strangely quiet. For the followers of Jesus, this is a time of deep sorrow. Their hearts are broken, filled with confusion and fear. They had believed with all their souls that Jesus was the Messiah, the long-awaited one sent by God to save the world. They had walked with him, listened to his teachings, and witnessed miracles that defied explanation. They saw him heal the sick, forgive those who were outcast, and show profound love to people no one else seemed to care about. He was their teacher, their mentor, their cherished friend. But now all their hopes seemed to have been buried with him in a cold, dark tomb, sealed with a massive stone. To many, it felt as if hope itself had died on that cross and was now locked away behind that heavy rock. But what they didn't know, what the entire world was about to discover, was that God was not finished. This was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning of the greatest miracle of all. Early on the first day of the week, while the sky was still a deep, dark blue, just before the sun began to hint at its arrival, a small group of women made their way through the quiet streets. Mary Magdalene, along with several others, walked toward the tomb where Jesus had been laid. In their hands, they carried fragrant spices, a traditional act of love and respect to anoint his body. Their steps were heavy with grief, and their minds were occupied by a very practical and seemingly insurmountable problem. As they walked, they whispered to one another, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb for us?" They knew the stone was huge, far too heavy for them to move on their own. But when they finally arrived at the garden, their worried whispers turned into gasps of disbelief. Everything had changed. The enormous stone, which had symbolized the finality of death, was already rolled away. Hesitantly, they peered inside the dark entrance, and their confusion turned to shock. The tomb was empty. Jesus' body was gone. Suddenly, the dim light of the tomb was filled with a brilliant glow. Two angels, dressed in clothes that shone like lightning, appeared before them. The women were terrified, bowing their faces to the ground. But the angels spoke with a voice that was both powerful and comforting. "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." In that moment, a wave of emotions washed over the women's shock, fear, and an overwhelming, unbelievable joy. They remembered his words. It was true. Just as Jesus had promised, he was alive. Without a moment's hesitation, Mary Magdalene and the other women turned and ran. They had to tell the disciples. Bursting with the news, Mary found Peter and John and the others. She told them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Breathless and confused, Peter and John immediately sprinted toward the tomb. John, being younger, outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stooped down and looked in, seeing the strips of linen lying there, but he did not go inside. When Peter arrived, he went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Then John also went inside. He saw and believed. Jesus had risen, just as he said he would. Later that very same day, two of Jesus' disciples were walking on the dusty road to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Their hearts were heavy, and their conversation was filled with sadness as they discussed everything that had happened. As they walked, a stranger joined them, but for some reason they didn't recognize him. It was Jesus himself. He asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. They told him all about Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. They explained how their leaders had handed him over to be crucified, and how they had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. They even mentioned the women's astonishing report from the tomb that morning. Patiently, Jesus began to explain the scriptures to them, starting with Moses and all the prophets, showing how everything that was written pointed to him, that the Messiah had to suffer these things, and then enter his glory. As they approached Emmaus, they urged him to stay with them, for it was nearly evening. So he went in to stay. When they sat down for a meal, something incredible happened. Jesus took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. In that familiar, simple action, their eyes were suddenly opened. They recognized him, and in that same instant he disappeared from their sight. They looked at each other in sheer amazement, their hearts burning within them. They said, "Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Filled with a new, explosive excitement, they forgot their tiredness and immediately ran all the way back to Jerusalem. They found the 11 disciples and burst in, exclaiming, "It's true! The Lord has risen!" That evening, the disciples were gathered together, huddled in a room with the doors locked. They were terrified. They knew that the same authorities who had arrested and crucified Jesus could come for them next. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. Then, in the middle of their fear, something impossible happened. Jesus himself appeared, standing right there among them. His first words were not of rebuke, but of comfort. "Peace be with you," he said. To prove it was truly him, he showed them his hands, marked by the nails, and his side, pierced by the soldier's spear. As they stared in disbelief, their fear melted away and was replaced by an overwhelming, indescribable joy. It was real. Their Lord, their friend, was truly alive. But one of the 12, a disciple named Thomas, was not with them when Jesus appeared. When the others excitedly told him, "We have seen the Lord," he was skeptical. His grief was too deep to be swayed by their story. He declared, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, the disciples were in the house again, and this time Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus once again appeared among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he turned his gentle gaze directly to Thomas. He said, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Faced with the living proof of the resurrection, all of Thomas's doubt vanished. He fell to his knees in adoration and worship, proclaiming the great confession of faith, "My Lord and my God." Jesus looked at him with love and said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." For the next 40 days, Jesus stayed with his disciples. He didn't just appear once or twice. He walked with them, ate with them, and continued to teach them about the kingdom of God. He was preparing them, encouraging them, and commissioning them for the most important mission in history. He told them that this good news wasn't meant to be kept secret. They were to go and share it with the whole world, the message that through him, anyone could receive forgiveness for their sins, a brand new life, and an eternal, unshakable hope. Then before he ascended to heaven to return to the Father, Jesus gave them one final powerful promise, a promise that echoes through the ages and reaches us even today. "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." The resurrection of Jesus is not just a fascinating event that happened in a moment in history. It is a living, breathing message for every single heart, in every generation. It's a message that speaks directly to our lives today. When your life feels dark and overwhelming, the empty tomb declares that there is hope. When you feel lost and without direction, it reminds you that God still has a purpose for you. When you feel broken and beyond repair, the resurrected Jesus brings healing and wholeness. And even in the face of death, the greatest fear of all, the resurrection shouts that there is life. The empty tomb is the ultimate proof that God always keeps his promises. It is the definitive victory of good over evil, of light over darkness, of love over hate. It proves that Jesus is stronger than sin, stronger than despair, and yes, stronger than death itself. Today that very same hope is offered to you and to me. We don't have to carry the heavy burdens of fear, shame, or guilt alone. Jesus invites every one of us into a life of forgiveness, peace, and a brand new beginning. Because he lives, we can truly live too. He is risen. He is alive. And that changes everything. Thanks for watching.